let's take a look at our top selections for
Hi everybody, Mike Beer here with the second of the two Stallion Series races for New York brides on the Saturday card at Belmont Park. Race number 9 is the Spectacular Bid division for 3-year-old colts and geldings. They're going to go 7 furlongs, widen their turf course. Here is your field, full field of 13 entered for the turf. Bottom 2 horses there, the 14 and the 15, are entered for main track only. Morning line favorite drawn to the far outside, Step Dancer. This is a horse who was a stakes winner over Open Company as a 2-year-old. Just matched his career best buyer most recently. Went back in with New York breds here in New York at Belmont Park in his most recent start. Getting a little bit, I would say, of perhaps class relief here. Back in with straight 3-year-olds. He's drawn fine on the far outside. He is, pretty clearly the horse to beat in this race. But it's not like he's a total standout in here. He is facing at least one other horse, and perhaps more than that, who have already run, well enough to think that they could be at least as good as this horse is. And several other horses who have some upside as well. So you do have Step Dancer to beat in here. Let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector, because as you can see here, Timeform US is projecting a fast pace for this race, led by the number 6 Dreamer's Disease. And Dreamer's Disease is one of the horses who has the credentials to make life pretty tough in a race like this for Step Dancer. Dreamer's Disease not only is also a winner on the turf previously. This is a horse who broke his maiden first time on the grass as a 2-year-old at Ellis Park against Open Company. Right to the lead that day, wired that field without ever really taking too much pressure, but earned a 78 buyer, winning that race as a 2-year-old. And then a couple of starts after that, after he wound up winning another race on the dirt right on the front end. This horse went into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last November and actually ran a pretty big race at a big price. He went a wicked pace in that race. Made it to about the top of the stretch before he got tired and finished a respectable 6th in that race after going fast on the front end. He has faced New York breds once previously. That was at the end of last year, right out of that Breeders' Cup Juvenile. They came back for a Stallion Series race, the Great White Way, here at Aqueduct in December. And he was defeated as a very heavy favorite that day, but he just lost all chance there. He stumbled badly at the start, rushed up into the pace to contest it, and got tired. He had a pretty big excuse that day, Dreamer's Disease. He has since made 2 starts so far this year as a 3-year-old. The Pat Day Mile was a very tough spot for him, and another race that was run at a very fast pace. And then they took him to the Texas Derby last time, $300,000 purse. He caught a sloppy track that day. A very strong field for that kind of a race. And once again, he went a pretty good pace in there, got tired in the stretch, wound up finishing 5th, but he actually ran pretty well in his most recent start on that sloppy track. You don't really have to worry about turf for him. He's shown that he can handle it. He obviously has some quality. He's a very dangerous horse on the front end in here. Another horse who has speed and who has figures to say he could be competitive here is the number 7, the King Cheek. This horse has never run on the turf before. But he, was a stakes winner 2 starts back on the main track, going 1 mile and a 16th. That was the first time he stretched out in distance, and he dug in and came back to defeat a very heavily favored Bob Baffert horse in Hosier that day. He exited that race on relatively short rest in the off-the-turf Grade 3 Penn Mile and finished 2nd once again after showing speed. We'll see. He's got a little bit of turf pedigree. I wasn't blown away by this horse switching surfaces here, but he certainly feels like he could be a decent fit in a race like this one, and he does have some speed. We'll see if he brings it over to the turf course. Let's take a look at some of the other contenders in the race. Well, why don't we start with Step Dancer, because he is the horse to beat. We only, sort of referenced him being a stakes winner early on. This is a horse who won his career debut at Saratoga last summer. In a little bit of an upset. Got a really good trip that day, a competitive pace in front of him, worked out a clean run into it, and had a good finish to get up at the end. Ran 3rd in the Grade 2 Pilgrim after that, came back for his final start as a 2-year-old here at Belmont Park over yielding turf in the Awad. We'll take a look at that race right now, because once again, Step Dancer runs pretty well, and he gets a good trip. To me, a lot of ways, this Awad was all about trips, and it feels like Step Dancer was one of the horses who got a little bit lucky in here. Just was able to get a position down on the inside early on, and he stayed right on the rail all the way. He always traveled pretty well down inside and behind horses around the turn. He was bottled up a little bit in the upper stretch, needing some room, but he got it. Got through on the inside, coming to about the 8th pole. Drove through down there, was pretty game to prevail at the end. I thought he ran fine in there with the trip really working out, but it was an 83 buyer speed figure for him. Off the layoff in the Cutler Bay down at Gulfstream Park. He just really never got involved that day. And then they dropped him back in with New York breds for his most recent start. And he matched his career best 83 buyer. He ran fine. He's only beaten a neck as the favorite that day. Personally, I didn't think he had a big excuse in there. He sat off the pace. That's his running style. He swept up on the outside and was, right there alongside the eventual winner through the stretch and racing that horse for it. And it just felt like he had the momentum, couldn't get by, and then got out-finished at the end and settled for third. I was a little disappointed he didn't win last time. I realized he was facing older horses, and now he's back in with straight 3-year-olds. I just felt like that was probably a race he could have and perhaps should have won last time. It just makes me a little leery about taking him as the favorite in this race. We could, take a look at a horse down towards the inside, a lightly raced runner, and number 2, Dancing Buck. I think this horse has a chance in this race. He's run twice on turf so far, finished second in his career debut last November. Thought he ran fine that day. Got a good trip. He's that kind of horse. He's got the tactical speed to get good trips in his races, and he got a good trip in his career debut. Took over that lead in the stretch and then just got out-finished by a horse named Perfect Munnings, who got a perfect trip, a Todd Pletcher-trained runner who came back to win a stakes race on dirt in his next start. But I thought Dancing Buck ran fine in that race. Broke his maiden on slop on a sloppy track in his next start. And he was back on turf in April over at Aqueduct going 6 furlongs. Another race, I thought he ran well in here. Not the kind of race that I was blown away by, but he clearly took a step forward back on grass last time. I look at the stretch run of that race right now. Another good trip for him in this spot. Comes up on the outside in the stretch, easily takes over and goes clear past mid-stretch in here. He's just sort of holding on at the end over a couple of horses closing it. It never looked like they were going to catch him, but they did make it relatively close, I guess. 82 buyer speed figure, though, for Dancing Buck. The 7 furlongs of this race isn't supposed to be a problem for him. He's obviously has the tactical speed to get a good trip in here, and he did take a step forward last time. There are things to like about him. We'll see what kind of price you can get on him. I thought Thunderbird Cafe, the 3, could be a little interesting. This is a horse who was very green in his career debut over yielding turf, and just took a pretty significant step forward, I thought, in winning his second career start. 6 furlongs again here at Belmont Park. Just showed much improved speed in his second career start. Right up the inside, making the pace the entire way. A quick burst of speed off the turn to put away the horse that was chasing him and opened up a clear lead. And there still looked a little bit green to me through the stretch of that maiden win. But he was much the best at the end there. I thought that was a good performance, and I think he's a horse who has more upside. Another horse, I'm not worried about him stretching out from 6 to 7 either. So I think he's a horse that you could, maybe take a look at a price in this race. And another horse who I'm going to personally try to beat the favorites with is the number 4, Ocala Dream for Tom Morley. This is a horse who switched to turf for his second career start last summer at Saratoga as a 2-year-old open company maiden special weight race. He went off at a big price. They didn't run poorly at all. Got outrun early in that race. And, he was in between horses through the stretch. He had room, but he was a little bit green in between horses, gaining ground all the way down to the wire. I thought that was a pretty solid effort for a horse in just his second career start. He didn't run again after that until April of this year. He came back off of that layoff in a pretty solid New York bred maiden special weight race. He finished third that day, a little bit of a step in the right direction. And then he really felt like maybe everything came together for him in his most recent start, his maiden win. And this is a race we'll look at right now because you just have to respect the fact, I think, that he showed much more tactical speed in this race, traveled in a way more handy position in this race, kept closer to the pace, just going very easily, not being asked around the turn while he was keeping up with the, behind the leader, set down in the stretch. And he just, kicked right to the front there past bar 14, a horse who had opened a clear lead in the upper stretch. Ocala Dream came right by bar 14 in there, maybe forced out a little bit at the 8th pole there to jump to his wrong lead. But I thought this horse took a pretty big step forward last time, an 83 buyer speed figure for him as well. And a figure like that puts him right in the mix with the favorites in this race. He's 8-1 on the morning line. I liked Ocala Dream in here. I think he fits pretty well in this field, and I'm willing to take him at anything like his morning line odds to perhaps take another step forward in here. I put him on top in race number 9 here at Belmont Park. I went 4-13. 6-3 in the Spectacular Bid, the Colt division of the New York Stallion Series at Belmont Park on Saturday. Approximate post time for race number 9 is 5:12 Eastern Time. Good luck.